Hello everyone and welcome to Wowhead Weekly number 255. Before I mention anything about the topics for today, I want to say that we have a very special guest, but I also want to say that we're keeping the introduction of that for another 5-10 seconds secret so you guys can get all excited about it. We have Castle Nathria has been out now. We have been experiencing, or at least experiencing, seeing others experience it. On normal and heroic mode, a lot of people have noticed that the difficulty seems a little bit higher than it has been in previous tiers, which is very, very interesting, and might also have some results on the World First Race, which is starting tomorrow. Perfect time to have a show now so that we can get ready for that. Let me introduce myself quick so we can also get to the special guest of today. I am Annie, or also known as Annie Fuchsia, and my co-host is, as always, the lovely Perculia.
Hey everyone, I'm Perk. Another busy week covering Shadowlands. Really happy to be here so we can highlight all the cool things that have been going on with Wowhead in the last week. Before we get introduction scrambled, Annie is a full-time Warcraft streamer. I am the site director for Wowhead, and now I'm introducing our special guest, NOBBEL87, who is lore master extraordinaire who explains all the stories and characters in Warcraft. So please give NOBBEL a very warm welcome.
Way!
Hi everybody. Hello everyone. I mean, that introduction, like, you're like, I'm the site director, full-time streamer, and I'm sitting here like, I like talking about Warcraft stories. I make videos, and
yeah.
it's a beautiful title. I don't see myself the way though. I just a lover of the lore, and I love telling the stories. And happy to be on. Hi.
We love having you here, and I know that a lot of other people out there love hearing you tell those stories, so thank you for doing that for the rest of us who aren't able to understand the lore or be able to summarize it in a nice way, the way that you do. Lore Walker. Yeah, that's your new title too. Yeah, and thank you, Perk, as well, for actually properly introducing us, as I got a little bit too ahead of myself with excitement. But yes, we have the World First Race, which is starting tomorrow, and for each World First Race, I feel like the event has become bigger and bigger. World First Race used to be something that was behind closed doors, no streams, because people wanted to understandably keep their strats and their comps and other things secret. But ever since, was it this year the first time? What tier was it?
I think in Chinese guilds were starting to stream in Ny'alotha, and then Uldir is when more people started streaming.
Gotcha. And ever since then, we've just seen an increase in interest to see all these guilds compete at the highest level as soon as the content is out. And that exciting time is starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yay.
So
how many teams are going in this time around that are actually broadcasting and whatnot?
So we did a post compiling this yesterday, and more and more keep popping up. But we've got Complexity Limit, who are the defending world champions. Big Dumb Golden Guardians, who were US number 2, and they've really stepped up the production with really innovative skits and horror movie posters of all the bosses. Lazarus Imperative has some ex-Blood Legion people. Echo has some ex-Method players. Method is returning, although they are joking that it's more like a scuffed top 10 stream after the PR issues. Pieces is now stepping up their coverage. And Aversion is doing a event all in German. And then the OTK network isn't following one group, but they're doing a roundtable tightly polished edited show each day during US prime time, more of a sports desk type thing, as opposed to we're following one guild and only one guild. So a lot of people are streaming.
Yep, it is indeed, and the hype is already starting with some of them. I noticed that OTK had a pre-show already going on today, and yeah, lots of entertainment and interesting competitions coming up very soon. And Nobbel, what were you saying?
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So that also means we got like a whole bunch of different casting teams this time around, right? Because last time we had 2, I think, that really had like a show going on. But this time there's OTK, and there's gonna be more of them.
Yeah, it's a lot of people are doing casting. Like I think Annie, you were even the big dumb Golden Guardians one. I think I just saw the
Yeah, I'm gonna be part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be joining them tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday for a session each evening. And yeah, there's a lot of guilds doing this basically, where they have the guild competing, and then they also have a separate show, which is the casting part of it, and that's where I'll be in. I mean, I know you're expecting me to also actually compete, as I'm a very skilled mythic raider, but you know, sometimes you have to let other people have a chance. So yeah. No, but and then there's some orgs like OTK who are not, you know, affiliated with a particular guild or specific guild, but they are still having casters and covering everything.
Yeah, I think it's really good for the community. Like a lot more people can get casting experience now.
Yes,
and maybe
100%.
Cast, like people couldn't because there was only like a few gigs, or you needed to be able to travel. But now I feel like a lot of up and coming people can just participate if everything is remote and at home, and it's just good experience for everyone.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's amazing to see so many different sources of things, and I'm sure each and every one will have their own little style to it as well. And if you get bored of one stream, you can go to another one, and you might want to go back. And it's really nice that there's so many different options.
Yeah, I wonder how the viewership will turn out, because
yeah, it's really interesting.
Like with Uldir, like there was only Method doing it, and you know, they saw pretty big numbers, and then more and more groups are doing it. I feel like, to me, I feel like at the start people will be jumping around, but then obviously whoever's in the lead will get a lot of the attention.
For sure.
But it might not even be the official show. Like, people tend to gravitate if, you know, one person in the guild has really insightful commentary, or if they're in, you know, more of a coaching role. More of the expert angle. But I think it's really good that there's something for everyone, and there's always like one or two people that, you know, really gain popularity as a result of this event. So I think it's just really good for people. It's a really exciting time.
Yeah, definitely. Are you looking forward to following it, NOBBEL?
I remember from last time that it was mainly the casting and the show around it that drew me in. I'm not massively into who gets the first kill. For me, it has to be entertaining to tune in. But I'm definitely looking forward to who is going to claim the title and how that's going to play out. Like you said, it's a whole different gaming scene. Shadowlands is really different compared to Battle for Azeroth. Curious to see how the choices that they made when it comes to covenants and soulbinds and all those powers, like a big feedback that they got during the beta times was like, these powers connect to the covenants, that's going to lead to certain things. I'm curious to see how that's actually going to play out at the higher levels, how much of a difference it's actually going to make. With the gear drops as well, not a lot of gears being dropped. How is all that going to play a factor? And of course, the skill levels of the team. There's been some swapping around. There's been some changes here and there. Who's going to go out on top? I'm curious to see how it's going to develop, yeah.
Something I think was just interesting with the like OP combinations is that Shadowlands has staggered a lot of things, so people can't do the equivalent of, you know, grinding island expeditions to get a slight edge. And in the case of Soulbinds, not all the trees are fully unlocked, and I believe all the Soulbind abilities that unlock tomorrow are all like fluffy-ish utility type things. So the concerns maybe people had that, like, oh, you know, the final ability is OP with a certain covenant, we're not going to access them or even have all the soul binds for the start of the world's first race. So I think that I don't know, I think it could be interesting not having as much. I'm sure there's still a lot of prep, but it seems that without things like island expeditions or the soul binds being staggered, it may not be as drastic as we're kind of used to with BFA. I guess we'll have to see. Also, the difficulty is something I'm very curious about, because, you know, with the first raid tiers, it's always like, oh, it's a pushover. This is like the prelude, you know, for the full raid. But this raid seems like really beefy, and I know a lot of people delay clearing heroic to do other split runs or other things, but it still took a while to die on heroic. I was very surprised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nobbel,
So,
did you have a chance to do any normal or heroic or anything?
Yeah. Like 2 hours ago, we finally finished the Nathrias.
Oh, nice!
My guild, I'm so proud of them. Thank you. We took down Killfuss, raid night 1. We spent like an hour on Killfuss when the platforms were bugged out. And we were like soaking the platforms. Our healers kept up with that and we still got it done. What for me is like Nathria is definitely tuned at a higher difficulty, but I don't mind the difficulty so much. I mind it that there's such a difference in difficulty between boss fights. There's a couple of them in there where you're going to be stuck on them, and then others where you just pull them and they fall down, and you're like, something went wrong here. Like, it's not even the mechanics that are part of the fight. It's just something with the numbers. It's just a face roll. Yep. And then the Nathrias himself is excellent. Oh, they did so good on the Nathrias. Visually, the fight itself, the mechanics that you're dealing with.
Cool. It's like the ceiling, and floors, and the mirrors, and all the red effects.
Anyone out there, if you reach the top of the castle, pop one of those potions from the Dark Moon Fair. It is gorgeous. And a big upgrade from Nyalova is a lot less trash that you need to clear in between, so you can actually get on those boss fights. It's really nicely designed.
Oh, we have the repair guy too. You know, in case you wipe.
That is, he is banking.
Oh yeah, and the raid skips are back as well. The raid skip quest. So.
Yeah, that's true as well. That's really good as well. Yeah, no, the raid has been. I
wonder with like the 10 bosses and like the higher difficulty, if we're going to see the race go on longer than expected, because remember with Uldir, it was like a big deal that it went past the first reset with the 7 bosses.
And it was like the first day even, wasn't it? Like 2 days or something to get through the first 7.
They got through them really quickly, and I think one boss, was it Fetid Devour? Like one of the bosses was sort of bugged, so it would have gone even faster if it wasn't bugged. And then I was like, okay, well, let's wait till the reset to get more gear. But we have more bosses. Some of them seem more difficult than in the past. And a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen with Christmas, because the raid is really close to the holidays. And normally, I don't know if Blizzard has changed things up, but normally Blizzard doesn't do like PTR updates or beta updates over the holidays, or, you know, they make announcements saying, you know, relaxed customer service around the holidays. So you just have to wonder, you know, I don't think Blizzard wants the raid dragging on too long. Like, I don't think they want to, like, wake up on Christmas and it's like, oh, you know, Sire Denathria's mythic phase has bugged out, 7 a.m. Christmas, everyone's missing their holiday to raid Sire Denathria. It's like, quick, everyone fix this. So the timing's a little weird, but I just wonder how long the raid is going to last.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting.
For the raiders, like, you don't want them to be stuck on progression raiding during Christmas time, right? So even for them, I'm just hoping, like, just get it done. I just hope that the fights are going to be fun and not just dragging on for hours for them. As well as, if there's one fight that they should be stuck on, it's the dance fight. I would love to see like an hour compilation of them just cha-cha-chaing all over the place.
Oh, that's actually true. Yeah, I hope that fight is really difficult on Mythic. Everything else, you know, I don't mind, but that one has to be a bit longer. Okay, Blizzard? Thank you.
At least I guess people are all mostly, well, I know Complexity Limit has a few people flying in, but at least most things are from home. So if the raid goes on like another day, you can just, you know, ping someone on Discord, hey, do you want to cast, as opposed to being like, oh, you know, we're flying someone back and forth from different countries.
That's a good point too. I wonder how the different orgs and guilds are actually planning around that as well, because I know for myself, for example, that the schedule is mainly for the first week. What if the next week is full too? What happens then? Have they already determined the schedule for that? Are they gonna call up everyone again? So who can do the same thing next week? It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I wonder in the second week if sort of the approach changes, because like we were saying at the start, like you want the casters in the show, but then towards the end it sort of snowballs into like who is in that.
That is also true.
Or like educational role, and people I think get more interested in like the voice comms, like the actual like sort of raw encounter as opposed to
the gameplay itself.
Like, oh, and on our 300th pull, like let's explain phase 1 and crack a joke as we're waiting to get to the you know?
Yeah, let's talk about the dance boss, which was covered last week. Yeah, so it's really nice. Cha cha cha, you know. I think absolutely right. It's gonna be so much more focused on the gameplay at that point, and most of the attention will probably just be on the 2 or maybe 3, if they're close, top guilds that are actually close to perhaps downing it. I think that's where the interest will be.
Yeah. So why don't we highlight some loot, because we were talking about Nathria's from last week. And yeah, getting the obvious out of the way, Nathria was dropping too much loot. Blizzard is making them drop 3 items. They were dropping 5.
After the reset, right? So it's not happened yet.
No, it's happening tomorrow. And yeah, it's not a surprise. Like when we interviewed Ian last month, we asked him about what was dropping, and he said 3. So, you know, it was definitely a bug, and this is meant to tie into Blizzard not doing like RNG and Titan forging by getting rid of the randomness. You can afford to have fewer pieces drop. It's not like, you know, oh, well, everything drops, but you don't want 90% of this. So they're trying to shift their approach. So we'll see how that goes. But some cool things that are dropping. A Night Fae Soul Shape from Heroic Denathrius, which is super pretty.
Oh yeah, I got a picture of that too.
I was about to ask, what does it look like? But you're gonna put up a picture.
Yes, it's up now.
It's so cute.
It looks so cool.
Yeah.
Like it looks powerful. Like it looks a bit, you know, bigger than the other shapes that you've seen.
Yeah. So this is the Veilwing Soul Shape, and yeah, it looks awesome. And this is 100% drop for all the Night Fae players from Heroic and Mythic Denathrius.
Yeah.
And this was a little controversial, but I think it makes sense. The sentient weapon, Remornia, the talking sword, is a battle pet. And a lot of people were like, oh, I really wanted this as a transmog, but I think it works a lot better as a battle pet because it's its own being and it floats around you. It's not, you know, there are so many other weapons that are just weapons you can equip. I think having the sword flying around is pretty different.
Well, I wouldn't mind having both.
Talk to you?
I don't believe that it talks to you.
Aw, but Master,
missed opportunity.
I want to carve them up.
Yeah.
Remornia's voice is, it's delicious.
Yeah, I hope we see Remornia doing more things in the future, because, you know, we've had good success with Xalatath as a talking weapon that keeps coming back. So yeah, why not this one?
Yes, please.
This was the pet that we briefly mentioned last time, as it's really interesting that it's an epic pet and that you can only have one of it. And it's also not cageable, so you can't sell it on the auction house. We were discussing how maybe it's potentially a reward from ahead of the curve, which maybe later then gets removed. But it seems like it's a boss drop in Heroic, at least on limit skill. Oh, normal too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Heroic only. My bad.
It
seems
my guilty got
just
it
dropped
during
from
our
the
kill.
boss. Yeah. You got it too?
Yeah, my guildie got it during our just kill an hour ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I didn't get it, so I didn't notice if anyone else got it. But that's good to know. That's good to know.
Not paying attention.
It's like, I didn't get it.
Not for me, I don't care.
Yeah. But that's interesting. So now we know at least that it is a direct boss drop and not anything from ahead of the curve, which probably means that it will continue to drop in the future too.
I was just thinking, Nobbel, that we were talking about how wouldn't it be interesting if Xalatath was somehow related to Shadowlands, and I just was thinking with all these Revendreth talking swords, that may not be such a silly theory. Like, we're suddenly getting a lot of weapons that have their own personality and have a lot of things to say.
Yeah, people are also wondering with the connection to Remornia and the name Remornia Frostmourne, if there was perhaps a connection there. But as we also discussed in the Castle Nathria video, I mean, nothing's impossible. I don't think so, since Renefal has Volparia, another talking blade, which is apparently the mythic armor smith in your Venthyr Covenants, which I found interesting. A sword that's like making more swords.
Yeah,
so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that's a parallel because like he was the first Venthyr, and the other Venthyr came after, and then it's like his sword makes other swords. It's like
and it's completely Castlevania as well, with the whole Dracula connection, and then the Alucard one that would be Renethal going against his former master. I'd love to find out more about the origin of these stories, the origin of these blades, even the story behind it, similar to Zalatov, and where did she come from? And it would be very interesting for those that are wondering, like what exactly are we hinting at here? If you've done the Sinfall dungeon and you climb the tower where you can readjust the lights, as you do during questing, there's like a book, and the book is called Enemy Infiltration.
Yeah.
And in that book, it suggests that the Realm of Death has infiltrated the other domains of the Shadowlands and manipulated events. And we speculated, well, perhaps the one that infiltrated the domain of the Void, seeing that the Void knows like 1,000 truths and sees it all, they were busted and then imprisoned in a blade as a punishment. But that's all speculation.
Right. It's just when we're seeing how many like Legion and BFA threads are being picked up now, it's like, well, Zalatath's a thread that could be making a reappearance. And I think in one of the interviews they've hinted that like sometimes cosmic forces can align to take something else out. So we're like, well, what if they were sort of working together and now they're, enemies? But yeah, all interesting. We should discuss the cinematic since we're discussing about lore. So before we get into it, I think I was really happy with the end of this raid, because normally we get hardly anything from the first raid. Like Horde got like a quest with Uldir, but we got a ton with this Castle Nathria cinematic. We got the little the RP dialogue, and then we got the quest, and then we got the cinematic with it featuring our character, and then we got Prince Renethal and Zrali both reacting to the events, and Sire Denathrius did not end up dead, and I think everyone's reactions and what happened to him set the story open for a lot of future stuff. So I was very happy with this, especially as a first trade. It felt like more satisfying and interesting than Ny'alotha for sure, and even Ashara. So.
Well, to be fair, it's not going to be hard to be more interested in Ny'alotha's ending. Let's be fair now.
Okay. They saved all the old god stuff until the final patch, and there could have been something, I don't know, epic. Like it just they took the story in a more interesting way, as opposed to like, oh, we were horrible war crimes in BFA, and now we saved everything and everything went back to normal. So I thought there was like a lot more nuance in this. So if you did not see what happened, when we defeat Denathrius, Remornia puts Denathrius' essence in the sword, so he won't die. And then we bring the blade to Zrali, and it's interesting because along the way, Draven and I think Renethal are all like, oh, like we feel bad, or like he used to be a good ruler, and it's like, I thought, this guy's pretty evil. We just defeated him, and now you feel sorry for him. But why don't we play the actual cinematic, and then we can discuss it.
Sounds like a good idea. Here, let me get it up here. Okay, so this happens after you get the quest item from clearing the raid, and you go and hand over the sword. Here we go.
You were ever fond of saying that the Venthyr do not destroy. We educate. It is time you were reminded of Revendreth's noble purpose.
Shall we begin?
You cannot bind me here. I am eternal. I am your master.
Remember this lesson.
Yeah. There
I
it
do
is.
very much love that cutscene, have to admit.
Yeah, it works
Especially
so
with
well on so many levels. Go ahead, Nobbel.
Yeah, go ahead, Nobbel.
Right. No, the one that just makes me smile is when Prince Renafal tells the Nefrius, like, remember this lesson? Because the cutscene at the end of the Revendreth questing is the Nefrius choking Renafal, like, remember this lesson. So he just pulls a big no you on him, and now he's like stuck in the blade. It's glorious. I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
What I liked, I thought that it was fitting how he was using the light to imprison others and do his experiments, and now that magic is being used against him.
Yeah,
and,
tables have turned.
Yeah, normally when you think vampires, you're like, oh, blood and like red and black, and I think having the light is just really aesthetically different, and also ties into Zerali's story as well, because her power was used against her in a way she didn't want, and now it's satisfying that Nathria is being purified using that.
How much do we want to go into spoilers, by the way? Like, where do we draw the limit, or is it all open hunting season?
As long as we put up the logo, I think it's okay. Or what do you think, Perk?
Yeah, we could do it to be safe. I know a lot of people that have been like streaming and seeing this didn't have spoiler warnings, but let's do it to be safe.
I think just to be safe.
Yeah.
Okay. Spoilers are
so the
off.
idea behind this Nice. So for those who haven't done the Sinfall Dungeon, similar to how you can find the book after you've done the Sinfall Dungeon, you also find Zerali in the dungeon itself. That's the whole mission where we go in there. We save her from the clutches of Sire the Nefrius. And inside of there, they're experimenting on her. And then once you have rescued her, you can turn in the quest for General Draven. And then nothing really happens, except if you phase out of the zone and you phase back in, all of a sudden there is a mirror where you turn in the quest. And quite a few people missed out on that detail.
Oh.
Going through the mirror, you can actually talk to Zerali as she's chilling at the tower, and she explains, like, yeah, once upon a time, we got into this war with the Venveer. Meaning that when people were wondering, like, why exactly is the light scorching this land in Revendreth? Is it invading, like we see with the Void and Bastion, or what is going on here? Turns out that the Nefrius has done some experiments with the light. He is pissed off the light somehow. Complete details, still a bit up in the air, but it hasn't been nice. So there was this battle. The light lost. They found Zerali on the battlefield and they took her in. Which also has some wonder if there's potentially a connection to the Nefrius experiments with the light here towards the jailer kidnapping Anduin in the Maw. Because in the Maw intro, we see Anduin do his Lordaeron thing where he's like, the light is always with me. And then the beautiful bubble shows up. And the jailer's like, how interesting. Yes, I think you will do. People are wondering, like, okay, did the Nefrius mess with the light because of the jailer? Or was he messing with the light because it would just simply mean more power towards him? But he is the ruler of Revendreth. All these Venveer are loyal to him. Why would he need more power, right? So it definitely has some merit there that they're looking at these cosmic powers, similar to how a Thrall could perhaps be the elements, a Jaina could be an arcane frost fire kind of deal. Again, realm of speculation. So what we see happen here is that the Nefrius, the Eternal One, he is not slain. He is placed in a blade. And my first reaction was like, oh, cool. The Primus wants this pantheon of death, like all the rulers of the Shadowlands, to stand together and face off against the jailer. So perhaps we'll find the Primus along the way. Perhaps we'll able to get the Nefrius on our side again. But then Renafal kind of tells us, like, it's gonna take some time immeasurable by your kind. And like, oh, so it's gonna take a little bit longer than 2 years of an expansion. All right.
Yeah.
So maybe
I thought that was interesting as well, because Denathrius was like not really nice to Renathal and everyone else, and it almost seemed kind because he's like, it will take time the likes of which your kind have yet to measure. And then he says, but in that time, I see my oldest friend, my closest confidant, and my greatest master stepping forth from this pinnacle of lecture, his true purpose once again affirmed. And it's like,
believe in
that
him.
sounds kind of like friendly for someone that's trying to like destroy your realm and work with the jailer, like, you know.
But this is the Nefrius, though. Like, this is the guy that, in the case of Renafal, is the guy that willed him into being. You could almost argue, like, by willing him into being, did he just give an essence of himself towards Renethal, is perhaps Renethal the reflection of the best that is the Nathrias. And these Venthyr...
I think that could be an event. There are like really proud, so you have to wonder, like, are the Venthyr all ethical, or is part of this upset that they've been like pulled over? Are they more upset that they have wounded pride and they were tricked versus doing the right thing? Because on a good day, the Venthyr Covenant is, they're doing a lot of torture, and it's not really above board. So.
Am I listening to the Runecarver right now? As we go through the Tower of Torghast, whenever you find somebody of the Venthyr, the Runecarver is like, yeah, that's a Venthyr, but you should still save them.
Yeah.
Or it's someone from like the Kyrians, he's like, ooh, a Kyrian, go save them, they're awesome.
Yeah. I didn't notice that difference.
Yes, they're vampires, and they torture you, and they are cruel in their ways, but it's a noble purpose. Like when we party with the Accuser, she's like, yeah, it's not a kind way of doing. You have been naughty to end up here. But we do it with a purpose. So even though they're darker and whatnot, once upon a time, the Nathrias was this guy that took it upon himself to help repent these souls over time, especially with the other Venthyr as well. Like in the case of the Nathrias, when you go through the castle, you see different sins displayed, like greed and avarice and whatnot. Over time, it almost seems like by saving these other souls, he got infected. And then when it comes to the Venthyr, some of them were willed into being, and they hold on strong to the desire of the Nathrias. Like the Stone Rite has been willed into being, and it's still very much like, I don't care about your war, it's pointless, but stop having my children fight each other. Renethal is very much like, sire, this is not who you're supposed to be. And I think it was not the Accuser, but the other one, the one that you saved from the tower.
The Curator?
The Curator. I believe that's the other one that was willed out of his being, and she is perfectly fine as well. Whereas the other Venthyr, like the case of the Accuser, which is why I like her character so much, she is a mortal soul that repented for her sins, and she now embodies the best that the Venthyr got. But then the other mortal souls, and we've been discussing about this quite a while, when a soul repents for their sins, they're offered a choice. Like you can either go back to Oribos, get judged, and go to a different domain, or you become a Venthyr. If they were never truly entirely cleansed when they became these Venthyr, and then over time, as they spend their time in the domain of Revendreth and the corruption seeped in, they just gathered these new sins upon their soul, and I really like that story. So yes, they are dark, but I wouldn't call them like the evil, what we see the Nathrias right now faction.
Right, I think it's just very easy to fall into indulgences, like we saw in Afterlife's Revendreth, how they were constantly using Garrosh for more anima, and the nobles were going along and using anima for frivolous purposes, and there was a very clear like caste system. It's easy to fall into the indulgences without just following your charismatic leader without stepping back and realizing that maybe it has gone astray.
I think spoiler tag can go down, right? Or
there's still a section I want to talk about,
okay.
but I'll
keep
give
it
a shout when we get there.
Okay. I can keep it up if you want, so that you don't have to worry.
Will I just finish off my spoiler thingy, and then we can go into the other
let's
thingy?
do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we were talking about the Sire, he is now imprisoned within his blade, and potentially that redemption is going to take a very long time. So then we got to wonder, well, what happens next? As you go through the Covenant campaign of the Venthyr, you are gathering these medallions of the Sire, and they are no longer ruled by one single person, but there's going to be like a council to rule them with these medallions. So by gathering the powers of the Nathrias himself into one single pillar, I imagine that if we are not going to have the Nathrias on our side, that would be a very good substitute. Like that power could represent what the Nathrias used to be, like all holding hands and we're all friends now when we got the power of the medallions.
It could speed things up, like, let's bring these medallions to the sword and see if that gives it a boost.
That, or maybe just use these medallions to be like a power beam that we needed, or, this is what Revendreth is. And then, of course, the other Covenants will also have their storylines as we go future many years from now into the final confrontation. But that was the final spoilery bit I actually wanted to mention right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and a few more things to say about the cinematic, but it wasn't necessarily spoilery. The first was how we talked about why Renethal might view Denathrius in a positive light, or even one deserving redemption, and maybe it's surprising, but also makes sense. Also, Draven says that Denathrius, when served a noble cause, his charismatic leadership and understanding of the dark desires were instrumental in the redemption of more souls than the world has known. Perhaps in time he could be this again if the right lessons were to remind him of his true purpose. So when I see both of them saying something similar, to me it makes me think like, gee, like, you know, this guy must have not been in league with the jailer forever, because all these subjects clearly respect him. And it kind of shows a noble side to Revendreth, that even if you really mess up, you deserve a chance at redemption.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, so if Denathrius was not doing anything out of sorts until recently, why did he start siphoning off anima? What made him change his mind?
Yeah. And that is the mystery still to be revealed. Like, you can tell when you talk with Renefal that he doesn't exactly know when the Sire turns, because that's in the Covenant campaign, where he mentions, like, we used to have these parties, and the Sire was there laughing, chatting it up, being charming as he always was. Was he already in league with the jailer back then? And during questing, we actually enter Sinfall, I believe it is, where they have, like, this direct gateway into the Maw. Something must have happened between the Nathrius that stood with the Pantheon of Death that imprisoned the jailer, towards the one that's like, oh, you want to destroy everything? Yeah, I'm down. Let's go. What happened? And that has not been explained, and that's so good.
Plus, there's that enemy infiltration book that we were just talking about, and that makes it seem that the jailer has been playing 4D chess and orchestrating things, perhaps with the Dreadlords and Nathrezim for a really long time, and people were speculating that Denathrius was like maybe like one of them, and he was always really close to the jailer. But based on what these characters are saying and how Revendreth like was running smoothly and was not a mess for, you know, hundreds of thousands of years, it implies that he turned later. So I don't know.
And
like,
I guess
was Denathrius coming late to the plot? You don't know.
I guess in a similar fashion, it could also be argued that Sylvanas also changed recently. So people could be like, this is the explanation to her as well. It's really cool how the whole jailer thing is being described as a big mystery in a way. Like, we don't really know what happened. Is this based on something that he is doing to these characters? Does he have something amazing to offer that they just couldn't say no to? What is going on? Another thing which is interesting with Renethal, what if them forgiving Denathrius becomes too soon, and then maybe they release him before he's actually good? He just manages to convince them, and then maybe we can see more chaos that way. It's gonna be interesting to see where this branches off.
Yeah. Or on the flip side, that explosion with the light was very bright and big. And if the jailer is all about like, oh, Anduin and the light,
maybe this is good for them.
Yeah, we just like put up this big flare signal to them, being like, look, like lots of light energy coming from Revendreth.
Yeah, like, come here, Anduin, we need you here.
Yeah, and if Denathrius was doing so much for the jailer with the siphoning off anima, you have to wonder, like, is the jailer going to retaliate and do everything? I mean, we basically highlighted where the sword is now. You know, what's to not have his Valkyr, you know, fly off and steal the sword.
Oh, it's gonna be another air attack, isn't it? It's another one of those air attacks where just nobody's around to shoot them down. It's like, whoops, bye.
Yep. So you have to wonder if
oh no,
something to alert the jailer to that as well, because he seems to back up his allies. We always see him talking to Sylvanas a lot, and he's got his armies. You think he would be upset that Denathrius, you know, was captured by us, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And finally, you ended with this in your video, Nobbel. What's up with Garrosh? Like,
oh yeah,
I know, right?
Yeah.
there is this during the Kael'thas fight. If you look at the windows on the edges, there's like the silhouette of the troll that we also saw in the Afterlife short, and there is something that looks somewhat reminiscent of an orc. On the opposite side, they just use the same image. Now, they could have just drained Garrosh completely, and Garrosh is just poof and was just used as an example of like, ooh, pride. but a lot of people just want to see a cameo. And there have been a couple of really cool moments. For example, at the end of Revendreth, where you go confront the Sire, there's all these pride little mobs running around in the ground. That would have been a perfect moment to just play a sound file of a distant roar of a Garrosh that's in agony and being farmed. It would have been such a nice touch. But so far, no sign of Hellscream.
Yeah, something that I think in one of the interviews with Ian leading up to Shadowlands, I think a group when I sat in on, people were asking about Sylvanas' actions versus Garrosh's actions and how there were some deliberate parallels made in BFA, and is that going to continue? And Ian said something, let me pull this up 1 second. I want to get the exact wording so I don't misquote.
And speaking of Ian, Ian is doing a little thing with Salute later today. That's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, another reason why the show is moving along. We've got a big Ian class interview thing going on later. But yeah, so Ian said at this point the storylines have already diverged quite significantly. There's a lot of complexities and things that differ about their characters, and I think as Shadowlands unfolds, I'm pretty confident, without giving away spoilers, talk of parallels between those two characters and their narratives will diminish steadily over time. And you could take that as, oh, well, you know, we'll learn more about Sylvanas' plot, and we'll remember how this is different from Garrosh, but wouldn't a great way to show how their stories are going in different directions is to actually have Garrosh present doing things, you know, in a way that's different than Sylvanas. Just bring him back and, you know, see him in action reacting to Sylvanas. That could be a way to make things very clear that they are different characters.
Yeah, maybe they both react differently to Jailer too. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask, there was the section where they said that Sylvanas was going to make Garrosh look like an amateur. Is that the interview?
Oh, yeah, that's another one.
So that was at so at BlizzCon, they were like, Sylvanas will make Garrosh look like an amateur. And then in this interview I had last month, someone in the group interview was like, hey, so you made this amateur comment last year. Are they still, like, parallels the same now, or have things changed? And then Ian was like, oh, you know, as things further unfold, their parallels will diminish steadily. So it's like, well, you know, they still seem kind of similar, how they're both trying to alter the cosmos to do something they want with the backing of an unsavory army behind them. So maybe if Garrosh shows up, we could better understand how they're different.
You know, like you mentioned, there is...
Sylvanas has like the weird, you know, Iron Maw people with their spikes, so...
Iron Maw people, oh lord, it's the Iron Maw horde, oh no. But like you mentioned, there's a lot of build-up when it comes to the Jailer and what his motives are. And at the same time, and that is something that's like in the back of my mind that makes me worry about it, on the WoW website, the Shadowlands website, his description is basically he wants to break out and he wants to destroy the universe. And the Archon, she called him like a monster that they had to imprison. Now, in the realm of speculation, we're all hoping, like, there must be more to it, right? Like, why would someone like Devils and a Sylvanas and a Muzala and then all these people ally themselves to the Jailer if he's just this bad guy? But at the same time, it could just be what it is at face value. Thing wants to break out of prison and we need to stop it. But I'm really hoping that they got more in store. And so far, the build-up is definitely there. And I can't wait to see more of it.
Yeah, especially I think with Devos, because the story, like, Tyrion is really pretty, but then you're like, does this make sense? Like, everyone has to lose their memories, even the happy ones, and Uther didn't get a fair shake at things, and, you know, the Kyrian didn't seem fazed by Frostmourne, and I think there's even a dialogue line where the Kyrian are like, isn't this weird how the souls are in the Maw and we're just doing our job sending them to the Maw? And they're like, oh, it's not as a question. Like, they seem very obstinate, and you can understand why someone like Devos, who is loyal to her subjects, is very upset by what almost seems like callous disregard. So,
and that's the cool part of the story in Bastion as well, because the Forsworn have some really strong arguments, like blindly following a path, just dropping souls in a Maw because that's part of your path. Are you crazy? But then their argument of giving up their memories and fulfilling this purpose of the Shadowlands, that if they don't, you end up with a whole bunch of oofers, and that is something that should not happen either. So there's definitely a reason why they have to be what they have to be. You have to wonder, like, okay, these Kyrians, they bring these souls to the Shadowlands, and they go through the rites of Bastion, and they forget who they are, they bring them before the Arbiter. But why? Why does there have to be such a system in which you get sorted like a sorted hat and then squeeze for your anima?
Right, and
Apparently
then
anima...
wrong thing. Like, then you're just stuck, and then it's like, oh, sorry you got sent to the wrong place. Now you'll just be like a really sad fallen angel, you know, no fault of your own. You just got sent to the wrong domain.
Arbiter makes no mistakes, and you're not allowed to swap your covenants. But then, like, the anima that they've been using, all besides letting their domains run around and do their thing, it's been used to keep the jailer imprisoned. So it all seems to point towards, once upon a time, the jailer did something naughty, he betrayed the rest of them, and that is when they designed this whole place of, let's get this prison going. That the jailer is able to tell you, like, look, I am not the bad guy that they tell you I am. You are just serving this system to keep me imprisoned. Look at how awesome I am. I have no hair. I got like these cool tattoos. Get me out of here.
Yeah, I can see Savannah's
Get
buying
me
that.
out of here. Yeah, you think I have a chance? Okay, cool. And then they're like, well, I don't think the jailer should be imprisoned. I was never told that I'm helping this jailer to be imprisoned. What the heck?
Yeah, it's like, oh, you know, do you think that this zone has issues and no free will? Well, you know, the jailer is the opposite of that. You should align with him, and, you know, he wouldn't have things like Luther or...
Which Sylvanas was already hinting to Anduin, right?
Yeah.
Or not just hinting, actually straight out saying that, in a way.
I think if we don't...
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. If we don't have more thoughts on the cinematic, I think we should hop back to the news at the start we're going to talk about, and then we can talk more about the lore. I'm just trying to get to the notes part of the show with the fastest selling PC game of all time.
Oh, yeah, the Blizzard announcements. Yeah. Very, very good news for Blizzard PR, which has been a bit shaky in the last couple of years, I would say, for Blizzard and Activision as well, since a lot of questionable things have happened. But it seems like things are looking pretty light right now for them, as they are facing really great numbers and player activity playing Shadowlands.
Yeah, I mean, partially with the pandemic, but they said that by day one of launch on the 23rd, the expansion had sold over 3.7 million copies, which broke the record set by Diablo 3 at 3.5 million and Legion at 3.3. And they claimed that player engagement was at its highest point in the last decade. Now, it's interesting because the 10th anniversary of Cataclysm was Shadowlands launch, so, you know, they're not comparing it to, like, Wrath or and even the day Classic launch came out, but it's still a very good number, and there's lots of positive stats, like players have spent more time in Azeroth this year than the same period of any of the last 10 years. Total player time in game is, like, nearly twice as much compared to the same period last year. And in the months leading up to expansion release, the game has sustained a really high amount of people on longer term subscriptions. So it's not just like people buying it 1 month and piecing out. A lot of that, I think, is due to the pandemic, and maybe even with the delay. Like, if you already purchased, you know, game time in September and then they delay it, you're going to be like, whatever, I'll keep playing for a few months. But, you know, it's definitely a lot of positive things aligning with Shadowlands, you know, with the holiday season, with the pandemic, with the story being, like, more fantastical and I think, like, interesting or appealing to casual players than maybe BFA. So lots of good momentum there.
I think the good momentum probably started with Classic coming out, and then since then it's been quite an uphill in a way. The delay was a little bit of a question mark, but I think most players who could think about the game itself and not about the fact that might have screwed up their plans because they took time off work probably agreed with the delay anyways. And yeah, just overall it's been positive, and so far people do feel like it's a great start of an expansion. And I guess we'll see later how things turn out, but it does seem very, very solid. And like we mentioned earlier today as well, to do with the World First racing, just a simple thing like not having to mindlessly grind islands and having a time gating that actually feels good is quite new. I think the only time gating that I don't like right now is the lack of redeemed souls, because I feel like there's no good reason to limit my...
it's all just flaky stuff.
Yeah, it's like working on your queen's conservatory. Like, come on, just let me have a few more redeemed souls.
Argue that
Let me have a garden.
Yeah, let me have a garden.
The story time gated, just because like you go into a dungeon and you're like, oh, like oh, the Devos is now like rolling. Like, it doesn't totally make sense if you do the dungeon before the story quest is available. But I think as far as like end game time gating, I think they've handled it a lot better this time.
Mm-hmm.
That's been rather interesting, though, the dungeons and whatnot. Like, I understand why those choices were made, but maybe at the drawing board, there should have been made a decision of, we're not going to do these big reveals in the dungeon itself. Because, of course, the dungeon should be available at the start, but the whole big reveal of Devils is betraying the Archon? What? That's like, yeah, it's killed her like 20 times last week. What are you smoking? Or Muzala is Vol'jin's boss? What? It's like... Yeah, he yells that when I go in there. And then there's also a world quest, which I'm not going to spoil, that makes mention of something that's going to happen way later in the Covenant campaign. I'm like, that should have been that should have been thought about before.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that these are definitely good numbers, good press release. There obviously is, like, the cyberpunk question being discussed. Like, oh, like, did this affect Shadowlands at all? I think based on Wowhead numbers, with like the hardcore players that are doing the raids and whatnot, it hasn't, and engagement is actually up. But I did think that Cyberpunk did kind of come in and like steal some of like the casual people that just play, for like the trendy game of the week. And maybe that's why Blizzard was trying to like pack in like Shadowlands launch and then next Ramus and then the raid all before Cyberpunk for protection, because like I said, we're noticing like pretty high traffic at the start of the week, and then like hour by hour when it opens, it's like it went down, but it's still higher than like BFA and Legion raids. It just was like everyone was playing Shadowlands the first 2 weeks, even people that weren't super into Blizzard games, and now it's more like the usual familiar crowd playing Shadowlands.
Just want to jump in real quick. Apparently, I just said Muzala was Vol'jin's boss. I meant Bonsumdi. My bad. Just if you're watching on a YouTube, like, what? Whose boss is who now? No, sorry. I meant Bonsumdi.
He's not a fan of Vol'jin. They are. They do not get along. But yeah, so we can go back to lore. We prepped some discussion questions and topics with NOBBEL and some cinematics we hadn't yet seen to discuss. So why don't we, if we don't have any more Castle Nathria or like Blizzard PR statements to discuss, why don't we just discuss some of the interesting lore topics that have popped up with Shadowlands, such as, let's start off easy, like what are some of your favorite quests or zones overall?
That one was for me, I imagine. Yeah.
Special guest gets all the questions.
Oh, yeah. For me, the one that stands out, which in my humble opinion is some of the best story presenting that they've done maybe ever, the Ysera storyline at Ardenweald.
I thought the same.
Start to finish. How that was just, oh, there's this little seed. And for those that didn't spoil themselves on the beta, and I know a fair people didn't, like, oh, there's this seed, and who exactly is in this? And then you go through it, and then that final march with the music in the background where it all comes together. Because I must have done that quest 10 times during the beta. And now with the music and it all coming together, and then that cutscene. It's like, oh, it creates speculation and questions, and she's back and it's beautiful. For me, while leveling, that was the one that stood out, yeah.
Yeah, I think the build-up when you actually see what's happening from her perspective is really sad. Because... when we do it in Val'sharah, it's like, oh, Ysera is lost, and we need to put her down, and it's really sad, but, it's, we know what we have to do. We don't have an option. And when you're seeing that even though she is corrupted, she still is sort of, she feels like very tortured by her decision. It was just really, really rough to do that series of quests when she's attacking the temple.
Indeed. I actually rewatched that cinematic yesterday with the Winter Queen, and Yeah, it's really well put together. It's definitely my favorite storyline as well, and I think just Ardenweald in general just so beautiful. Every time I fly into the zone, I was like, "Oh, this feels great." I'm so happy I'm Night Fae. Wait, what covenant do you play, Novel?
I've chosen Venthyr. If you want to boost up Ardenweald, by the way, like Ardenweald is gorgeous on its own. Just pop one of those Darkmoon Fair potions, the
Oh
inky black
yeah.
ones, and just lose your.
I know that it's so beautiful with the stars.
It should be a toy, and not one of those. Not one of those
24
toys that
hours.
is like you could use it for 5 minutes between an hour. No, just an on and off button, Blizzard. Give me my night sky, please. It looks so good.
True, it could be a toy.
Right?
Yeah. Give us a toy that does the same thing. So we can appreciate
For me,
Go ahead.
the Covenant choice eventually became like I wasn't drawn to the Kyrian, even though their abilities are amazing for a Paladin. So my choice became either Ardenweald or the Venthyr. And even though I really like Ardenweald, the zone, the story, the setting, the campaign, the ability for a Paladin, the whole blessing of summer and spring is just not fun for me. So that is what pulled me over to the Venthyr, which I also really like, and the theme and the Covenant and the Transmog. So quite happy that I did, because now I get a massive AoE zone where it like heals and I can hammer. It's great.
Yeah, that massive AU is actually a
Ashen
really cool
Hollow.
ability.
I really like when you're questing through Revendreth that when you get the mirror ability, there's like interesting things you can do with it nearby. So it's very good at teaching or encouraging you to use it for creative things.
My raiders lost their mind. I jumped during the Nathria's fight to one of the platforms with my Deathgate ability from the Venthyr. They were like, "How did you do that?" I'm like, "Well, I could teleport." And then all of a sudden, next pull, everybody was jumping over and killing stuff. It was great.
I think the reason why some of the Shadowlands zones work really well, like Ardenweald, is that they tell like one story very well with a lot of polish, as opposed to like say BFA, where it's like, okay, we're in Guard Sound, and then there's all these little cities, and they've all got their little side stories, and it's hard to keep track of something, or you could look back and be like, oh yeah, you know, that was a cool story, but it kind of got dropped. But with these fantastical zones in Shadowlands, like it's a blank slate for Blizzard, so they can just create compelling stories and know that they can see them through, as opposed to feeling like there's like a lot of potential and maybe something got lost by the wayside. Like every character has a lot of thought put into them.
Yeah, you also stick with them later down the line. And I think a big problem with Battle for Azeroth is that they build up these new zones like Kaltiris and Zandalar, and then it just was taken over by the wave of faction war, something that you've already seen before. The war campaigns, with the exception of Pride of Kaltiris, but again, that's Jaina Proudmoore, that's something they already knew.
And then the Old Gods, and you're like, well, like what happened to the unrest in Zandalar with Talanji? Like there was a lot of old threads that weren't up. And Shadowlands seems to have like a much tighter, sharper focus on the stories they want.
And it's a build up as well, as for most of the Covenant campaigns, what you see in the zone is actually what you're going to play through in the Covenant campaign as well. So it's a nice taste, and if you're like interested, you can dive further. Exception would be Ardenweald, as that also dives into storylines build up in Battle for Azeroth, which I found really interesting. Like, why did they pick Ardenweald over all the other Covenants to tell those two specific storylines? Why not just make them available to everybody? But those choices have been made. And then, of course, you got to wonder, like, okay, we've dealt with the Venthyr Covenant into Castle Nathria. How are the other Covenants going to play out? Are they all going to get their own raids and their own future storylines? I hope so, because there's really a lot of interesting stuff going on. In the Ysera cutscene from Ardenweald, for example, with her sister. Like a simple mention of, she is one of my sister. Everybody's like, sister? What sister? And now there's like this discussion going on between, is it either Aonar or is it Elune? And there's like speculation, discussions, and arguments. It's fantastic.
Yeah, there's actually the notes listed quickly, and then we'll go back to the raid discussion, because I thought so too.
Because we had a small talk on that. Would love to hear what your thoughts on it are.
Yeah, so which are you? Who do you think the sister is? Who are you leaning towards?
I am, and I'm going to say this in the setting of, it's pretty much a 50-50 toss-up right now. In my humble opinion, they can go either way. Leaning more towards Elune, and the reasoning for that is not because there's not an argument to be made for Aonar, but one, we're dealing with the Night Warrior storyline, which would be connected to Elune as well. And if we're thinking about Elune, we're thinking about this mysterious being that we haven't gotten a whole lot of details on. Whereas ANR and the Titans, yes, they're mentioned. Yes, there are memories to be found. But we dealt with those in Legion. I find it way more interesting to dive into Elune rather than ANR. That's why I'm more leaning towards Elune. But could it be ANR? 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there are arguments why both of them work. I was just leaning towards Elune because there was a lot of visual cues in the two cinematics where, Sarah is raised into the sky after her death, and Durand and Elune was behind that, and you have the Night Elf music playing, and then in the Ardenweald cinematic, there's a lot of throwbacks to the other, the Valshara one, where, she's once again like the stars, constellation in the sky, the Night Elf Night Song theme is playing, and then right after those throwbacks, you have the Winter Queen talking about her sister. So that's why I think they could be related. And like you said, we don't know a ton about Elune, and we know that the Night Warrior quest line is tied to Elune, and that's going on in Ardenweald. So I think it would be interesting to learn more about her. It could even be a good tie-in to this first one's lore, which we know we're getting more of, but they seem kind of like abstract and not approachable. But if it's tied into some characters we already know something about, it could be more of an interesting hook, as opposed to being like,
could be really interesting.
So
your connections, by the way, there's also, let's not forget that during Legion, we were hunting for the Tears of Elune, and she went down at the Temple of Elune. There are a lot of connections to be found there. But I've also heard people argue that perhaps Elune is like the mama, and then Eonar and Ysera will be a tier below her.
Right.
It's going to be interesting to find out. About the first ones, they are, as far as I'm aware, like in the interview they mentioned that they were about bringing order to the cosmos at the very beginning, I think. It makes you think like, oh, cool, maybe that's a different term for the Titans. But then when you quest through Bastion, you can read a scroll where like Azeroth is called a Titan. So they're not unfamiliar with the term Titan. So I'm really hoping that like the first ones and the Eternal ones, new stuff coming up.
Yeah, so but going back to the whole like raid, or why was Ardenweald picked to be the BFA throwback zone, I think that it feels like Revendreth, Aldraxis, and Bastion are all sort of tied together with the story, and yeah, Ardenweald is the one that sticks out. I do think it makes sense that they tried to put both Alliance and Horde threads into one zone to like consolidate it, or so it's not like, oh, if you're a Horde player, it's just Night Warrior and you feel really bad for Teldrassil, or oh, we're just hearing about this troll. So I think it was good to highlight both stories in that zone. I guess because they want people to make alts and level with Threads of Fate. It wouldn't be like a super bad hardship to have one character doing like the main Covenant story, and then another character does Ardenweald for the more like Azeroth focused storyline, leveling in different ways. I think it's better than trying to split it up among all 4 Covenants.
Yeah, sure enough, like you can make alts to go through all the storylines, but these are storylines heavily built up in Battle for Azeroth. Say that you are like, hey, I was a member of the Horde, or I was a member of the Alliance. I'm trying to, can we put up the spoiler tag again?
Oh yeah,
sure.
Real quick,
I'll put it up.
so I could just dive into that.
Yep,
yeah.
It's up.
So, say that you were a member of the Horde, right? And you were really invested in that who touched Vol'jin's spirit storyline, and like, oh, what's happening with Vol'jin and his spirit and my war chief, and is he coming back? In order to get the answer, now you have to be part of Ardenweald, and it's like, that seems to be an open story already built up in Battle for Azeroth, so therefore we make the argument like that should be available for everybody. And the same with the Night Warrior, that is on the Alliance side. That was again available for everyone. Not to mention that I found the decision to be really hateful towards this Maul Walker that's helping them out. Like, I don't know. I kind of don't feel like I want to help you out right now, but I have to, otherwise I don't get my renown. Like, I just want to leave you behind in the Maul, Chandris. I'm here to help, okay?
That's actually true. I didn't think about that when I was doing it. She was really annoying, actually.
It's interesting because
she was really hateful.
I feel like every expansion kind of struggles with that. How there's some, like with Legion, there were so many class-specific stories, and you maybe didn't know what happened. Like there was some very important detail that was missed if you didn't play a class, or like in the case of Tyrion, his story kind of stretched between several different artifact campaigns and then ended up in the Death Knight campaign. And I think that a lot of people missed what was going on there as well. And then maybe in BFA they tried to like have all the stories available to everyone, and that had its own set of problems. Hopefully there's been enough emphasis with the Afterlife shorts that it's been like, special story you must do if you want to know what's going on. But yeah, I do think that it does feel a little artificial that we need to break up important parts of the story into different covenants, and then even in that we have to like break it up into renown and different weeks. So it does seem pretty staggered, and narratively speaking, some of the big reveals like the Night Warrior or Vol'jin could be really epic if everyone got to experience it. I think that would be like really hype if everyone knew what was going on, as opposed to having to like read Wowhead and be like, oh, you know, if you're an Ardenweald player this week, you learned what happened with Vol'jin, and the rest of us have to not experience that.
Yeah.
Exactly. They could have built up other stories in Ardenweald with the whole Drust that's going on, and deep dive into like, oh, this is the origin of the Drust. There's plenty of things to talk about without these sections. Sorry, Annie, what's up?
No, that's okay. No, you're right. It's definitely interesting that they decided to continue those stories stuck in one covenant. But I guess BFA was that special exception where everything was kind of everywhere, or most of it. I do think though that Tyranda's everything to do with her and Teldrassil and the things happening with her becoming a Night Warrior, I do feel like that might lead to something later, which might be confusing for the people who missed the Ardenweald storyline. But I do feel like that will lead to some kind of big thing, perhaps a raid. I don't know.
Maybe that's why, going back to Nobbel's idea about the raid, that can make sense because, like, you know, say you picked you're like Ardenweald and now you're doing Castle Nathria and you're like, oh, I think I missed some of the story. Maybe my alt should be Venthyr. Like, you're sort of going into the raid with something that's going on, but not everything. Or you're like, oh, we saved Kael'thas. I want to know what happens. I guess I better do the Venthyr Covenant. And maybe if there's a Covenant-specific raid, it could be like a good, I don't know, call to action to get filled in on the major parts of the story, and then also inspire you to the quest for yourself.
Because the Night Warrior mention happened before this expansion, and then now it's kind of like a little bit more details for the people who do decide to follow that story. But technically people are still aware of the whole Night Warrior thing. So then if it does turn into a raid later on, they might feel like they missed out on some things, and yeah, maybe they decide to go back to fill in those details.
Yeah, like I'm sure after everyone really liked the Uther cinematic, and I'm sure people are like, okay, so like I don't want to do all this Kyrian campaign, but like I want to see Uther again. Like, what happened to Uther? Yeah, I feel like the Kyrian definitely needs a raid because, like we said, it's felt so choppy, especially when you go from Devos being nuanced in the cinematic to being like, you know, helpful in Bastion, and then you go into the dungeon and now she is evil and fallen. I feel like I'm
not happy with that story. I'm not happy with that story. I'm not happy with Devos' fate.
For Devos, so
they did her dirty. They should have done so much more with her. And it's like, yeah, you go into a dungeon and she's dead now.
Yeah.
And they make Lysonia the leader of, and it's like, no, that should have been Devils.
Yeah.
Of Lysonia, nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it's hard to have a new character with how old WoW is really stand out and get people's attention. And I think that they did a good job in the cinematic with Devos.
Yeah.
And they should, you know, hold on to a good thing. I don't know. Maybe she'll come back. Who knows? But
like you said, that storyline, like in the case of Uther, there's the whole throwing Arthas into the Maw storyline. So there's a connection towards the jailer. We still have the spoiler tag up. Nice.
Yeah.
We also got, as you mentioned before, that the Venthyr and the Maldraxian one, they're going to come together. And they're going to point towards a certain storyline and a certain ally. And then Ardenweald potentially to the domain of life. If Ardenweald is the death section of it, then the Emerald Dream life part is another one. So that could be a raid. It all comes together and potentially confront the jailer. That could be cool.
Yeah, I mean, since the spoiler tag is up, the Venthyr and Maldraxxus ones are focusing on Kel'Thuzad, which, pretty, you know, big deal. Keep seeing him pop up with Naxxramas. And that would certainly bring some hype as like a mid-expansion raid boss. I think that could get a lot of people really excited.
Maybe that's why Nax was rushed in Classic.
Yeah.
Max 3.0
Now
is
it
coming
all
out.
makes
Max out.
Yeah. We had the invasions coming back for the third time, and now we're gonna have Nax coming back for the third time.
That cutscene that
True.
you did, I stopped myself from looking at it because it looks but to see Kil'Thuzad confront Kel'Thuzad, the man responsible for his corruption of the Sunwell. And then because we know that Kel'Thuzad is an ally of the jailer, how does that work with someone like Sylvanas? Like, is she aware that Kel'Thuzad is part of it? Like,
Yeah,
how
you
would
didn't.
she react to it?
We won't go into spoilers, but yeah, there's definitely some moments where you're like, how are they all getting along? Like,
Yeah.
Right?
yeah.
Like imagine them sitting together in like a classroom and then the jailer at the front. So what's on today's agenda?
But why don't we watch another cinematic? Why don't we watch the cinematic where you turn in enough legendary recipes and this triggers, and there's a lot of speculation that the Rune Carver could be the Primus, and why is the jailer doing stuff with Frostmourne? So yeah, why don't we watch this quickly? I don't think it's a spoiler because a lot of people have already seen it, but yeah.
In that case, let me quickly take down the spoiler tag in case there's people who have muted us. There we go. Spoiler tag is gone. And yeah, so we're gonna be checking out a cinematic together here on the Rune Carver.
Look at you, pathetic. A puppet dancing on strings. I will not break. I will not break. I will not fool. Your mind is already broken. But even a broken thing can be made to serve. Countless secrets extracted. Insidious designs forged into weapons for my armies. But I require more. Your grandest desire to claim the final prize. The secret that the first one sought to hide. Yes, your finest morn blade, and a crown fit for the king of the damned. The vessels of domination.
Yeah, there it is.
So, yeah, Jailer definitely tied to Frostmourne and Helm of Domination now.
Yeah.
That was not just a mysterious thing that the Dreadlords floated into Azeroth. So, I feel sad for them.
Really interesting. I like that you got the fixed cutscenes. So, because I've seen a whole lot of bunch of people, they got like the cube, and they don't get the actual jailer to pop up.
Oh yeah.
Devon was fighting. Yeah.
And it's such a shame. But yeah, what we learned from this, I actually have a question before we continue. The naming schemes of the memories of the Rune Carver, right? Like, so you got the memory of Aeonar and whatnot. Was that based on legendaries of the past, or was there a different reasoning behind it?
I thought Blizzard said that like these are the primordial essence of some set bonuses and things we've encountered on Azeroth, and like this was like their origin of it. So I guess like a lot of the names reference like Legion legendaries or set bonus names, like so they were purposely picked to echo things we've seen in Azeroth.
Okay, so they weren't picked because they were actually the memories of the Rune Carver. Because we have, for example, a memory of Aeonar, which would link the Rune Carver to the Titans. But then he also has a memory of Kaltira, and I'm like, when did the Rune Carver run into Kaltira?
Right. I think that's like the it's like maybe if it was the Primus, and he's a master crafter, maybe he I think he knew about the essence of these powerful effects. But like it's the effect. It's not like here's a memory of Aeonar. It's like here's a memory of a nature-themed proc.
Okay, so that's
Cool.
like a lot of the
that's
druids
what I was
Yeah.
wondering about.
would be like, oh, here's a memory of, name, and the name is the Legion legendary. So I think like
Gotcha.
Kultira, for example, could be. I think it's a reference to 1 second. I think it's a legendary called Kultira.
Always learning things with perk and
Oh yeah,
I was
so
really curious about it.
yeah, so the memory of Kultira, the proc is based on Kultira's newfound will, so that's why you got the name Kultira from that.
So, what we see happening here is that the jailer is interrogating the rune carver to get beautiful designs, and he actually extracts Frostmourne and the Helmet of Domination, so that's been confirmed. Now, the dialogue is rather interesting, and I'm curious what you think about it as well. He mentions that he wants to extract the secret of the first ones and claim his final prize. Now, does that refer to Frostmourne and Domination gear? Or is he talking about Azeroth? Because that is where eventually the armor ends up, and he's like, "Ooh, I'm gonna claim the soul of your world."
Yeah. So I took it as the grandest design being Frostmourne and the crown. Just maybe just the way I read it on paper, it's like, oh, you know, I want you to make your grandest design. I want you to make Frostmourne and this helm, and with that, final prize will be Azeroth, which makes sense because then, you know, the Lich King had to wear the crown, and that has led to the veil parting.
Okay. So yeah, because I was wondering, like, if the final secret that the first ones were trying to hide, and he's like, "I'm gonna go for Azeroth," then that could potentially create a link between the Titans and the first ones, because they would very much want to protect the final Titan. But if it's more about the secrets of domination gear and claim that final prize, which is, you know, dominating the cosmic chart or whatever, then that would be an alternative path they could take. So now we know that like the helmet has been created here, Frostmourne's been created here. In the past, it was said that the Dreadlords forged Frostmourne because it's prevented them from being sucked into the blade. Now we know it's the jailer. Once again, like you mentioned, establishes a connection between Dreadlords and the Shadowlands, and that book,
True.
that enemy infiltration book. If you want a video, we got the Cosmic War of Warcraft, in which we talk like whispers and the book, and we deep dive. But real short, it pitches the idea that the Dreadlords are actually in league with the Shadowlands, that they were the ones that brought the domination gear Frostmourne to Kil'jaeden, and then Kil'jaeden used that to infuse it with the soul of Ner'zhul, which led to Arthas picking it up, which led to the death of Sylvanas, Ulfar getting the helmet, Sylvanas killing herself, ending up in the Maw, the allegiance with the jailer. All those steps based right here in the realm of death and the Shadowlands, which alters like what 30 years of storytelling.
Right.
Like there's now a source behind the source. So is it gonna fit? No, because I don't even think the jailer was a thing during Legion, let alone 30 years ago. But it is interesting to now look at what they created and try to make it fit.
Yeah, it's also going back to the speculation, you know, is the Runecarver secretly the Primus? Because we know the Primus has been missing for a very long time, you know, going back to the Draka Afterlives, which is around the Third War. Yeah, I mean, if the Primus was making these weapons, we know that the Primus was a master smith in Maldraxxus. The time frame lines up pretty well with all that. And I think the voice actor sounds like very similar, and the music has Maldraxxus around the Runecarver, so that could be another grand reveal Blizzard is trying to save. But all the obvious signs.
Well, is it going to be a grand reveal? To like everybody in the Mother is like, oh, you got a missing Primus?
With like Teldrassil, everyone's like, it seems like Sylvanas is going to burn Teldrassil. It's like, oh no, there's more to the story, and people were still like, it was still like a sense of like, oh well, now we know why, even though a lot of people assumed it was her previously.
It's interesting though, yeah. And this Runecarver has just been absolutely mind-wrecked by the jailer, as the Torghast will do to you. I have heard the argument of the fingers. Apparently, the statue of the Primus has more fingers than the Runecarver, or vice versa. But at the same time, I would argue like that's a statue and not the actual being. But it's not 100% confirmed quite yet. But then at the same time, this is such a creature that you deal with for such a long time. It would be a bit odd if it was just a random mob that has all these memories scattered around.
Yeah,
Makes
and
sense for it to be the Primus.
Like his fingers, I'm gonna hold it up. his fingers look very, they don't really look normal. Like they're very extended. They almost look like weapons. They've got things sticking out of them.
Yep.
It's not like, oh, there's a human and he's, I don't know, missing a thumb. It's a very fantastical looking creature.
The little cutscene where you burn like one of his cuffs though, and he's like reaching out and trying to go, and he's like, "Oh, I can't go yet." It's so sad.
Yeah, it is.
But I think, I mean, even if they are the same, I think it'll be obvious to some people. But because these are brand new characters, and the Primus speaks in riddles, and riddles aren't always WoW players' strong suits, I still think it will be satisfying to have everything laid out, so you can be like, oh, like this riddle clearly pointed to this, and you know, this is what caused him to steal the rune carver, and you know, the Primus seems really smart. It's like, how did he get kidnapped? So I think there's still a lot of questions we could have answered, even if this is confirmed in game.
This is all 4D chess, this is all endgame. So the Primus in an interview, they said that he had a friend that allowed him to see like infinite time ways, right? I'm gonna assume that everybody's seen the movies by now, but he was able to see endless time ways and like perfect his stratagem and be like, yeah, I can predict things now. That is also why when you go through Meldraxxus, you pick up the sword and he left like these warnings behind. He's like, I think the jailer's got like ancient allies and be captured, so I was right. He knew that in order for us to come into the Shadowlands and stop the jailer, he had to be captured, so the jailer would make Frostmourne and Domination Gear. The Lich King would be created, Sylvanas would happen.
Like all
Show up.
The one pathway work out, a bunch of things had to happen to align, and
yeah, but this is 4D chess. It's similar to how they knew that if they gave the stuff to kill Jaden, that eventually there would be a Bolvar on the throne and that we would break the helmet. It's all connected. It's all lined out. It's not 30 years of storytelling. No. It's just this is how they predicted stuff.
Yeah.
But it's fun though. It's fun to see, and I'm really curious how they're going to make those puzzle pieces fit, especially when it comes to someone like Melganis, because we know that the Dreadlords are, well, no, we don't know, but we're assuming that the Dreadlords have a connection there. But Melganis had this massive hate boner towards Arthas. He was like, how dare you strike me down? In Wrath of the Lich King, he showed up again, and he was like, if you want to defeat the Lich King, you're gonna need my aid. Like, why would you want to help out defeat the Lich King? The Dreadlords in Warcraft 3 were also like, Arthas, what are you doing? We're dominating this world for the Legion. What are you doing?
Right,
so I'm
also,
curious how they're gonna...
like we were talking about with the spoiler section, we were saying that Sylvanas and some of the allies brought up, it's puzzling that she would be happy to see some of them as well. So, yeah, like I said, interesting to see if these characters disliking each other suddenly having to work together.
Yeah.
And that all comes down to motivation again as well, because we don't really know for 100% what the jailer wants, and we don't know what Sylvanas wants. Like, her motivation could simply be, I was in hell, and the devil, the ruler of this domain, offered me a way out, and I simply took it. But then at BlizzCon, they also said, like, he is not her master. She is on her own, so...
Yeah, she's making Garrosh look like an amateur, so it's like, well, does she have something planned? Like, is
she's playing the jailer.
Yeah.
Is she going to pull an Illidan and turn the powers against him? What exactly do they have in mind in there? But then, you know, yeah, it's a storyline that's got to evolve, I suppose.
I think we could watch the other cinematic in the notes. We discussed it a little last week. This was a data mine one related to an upcoming story in Torghast, so I guess spoilers could be up. But yeah, so Sylvanas with the jailer. We can just play it quickly.
Yes, spoiler tag is up, so avoid this cinematic if you don't want any spoilers. Let's see. There we go.
All that matters is we now possess the necessary instrument. We must begin its preparation.
Leave him to me. You've seen what he is capable of when he believes in the cause. A measure of patience may yield superior results.
Very well. We have our weapon. Now, we shall hold it.
Yep.
Like
There
her
it
just
is.
chilling in the corner right there, just vibing, like, ooh,
Yeah.
that's some good information.
Yeah.
Yep, just casually eavesdropping.
Yeah, so what stuck out to me was that the lighting is like really different than the Anduin and Sylvanas one. Like the Jailer and Sylvanas here have got this weird bronze tone to them, but she's got like more purples and reds with Anduin, and it's like, is the light changing her? Like, why does she look so different when she's talking to the Jailer? Because they definitely got this like weird brown glow to them, which is kind of disconcerting.
And that's not just the data mine thing, is it?
No, it's, I mean, well, like when you just look at the background setting, like even like everything has this like weird bronzy glow to it, and I don't know if it's meant to like show, like maybe she's putting on a face in front of the Jailer, like you know, she.
The source of this cutscene, is it Bolvar peering into the maw again? Like, where did the cutscene come from?
We data mined it. We did the whole quest line on the beta, and this is tied to the week we tried to rescue Anduin. And then, you know, Sylvanas.
Oh, so you actually physically go into the tower. It's not like you're watching the tower through Bolvar's eyes. Oh, okay. Yeah, then there's indeed the question of the coloring.
Yeah. It's also, I mean, it's interesting because why is Sylvanas so patient with Anduin? Because she's talking to him and, you know, is trying to, I assume, be honest with him. And now she is telling the Jailer, oh, you know, don't be impatient, leave him to me. And you're like, well, you know, what is she playing at? Does she want, you know, the Jailer to get Anduin for the light, or does she want to reach him separately for her own purpose?
I think that falls in line with what she tells him. Like, we know what he can do when he believes in the cause. And if you're going to try to push him like you try to do with a Jaina or a Thrall, you're ultimately not going to get the result that you want. But if you let me purr around him, you know, give him one of the upper rooms with a slight breeze and a view of the maw, and give him some food, and let me convince him, you know, I got this. You will have a powerful weapon. He will serve you ultimately. He will see the way that we see things. Because apparently, whatever their motivations are, Sylvanas thinks she's in the right. She thinks she is doing the good thing.
Yeah.
And if that means, you know, burning down Teldrassil, then so be it.
Yeah, I mean, she's talking about free will, but then it's like, oh, you know, to make you really believe in this free will and how good the Jailer is, I'm going to imprison everyone. Because, you know, free will. And it's like, I don't really think the Jailer has done a great job showing that he's got this, you know, successful, happy community here. Everyone seems pretty much enchained, you know, enslaved. I wonder if Varian or Sourfang would make a reappearance, and if Varian showing up could convince Anduin. Like, maybe Sylvanas, you know, had her vision of hell, and she's like, things are really unfair, you know, I didn't deserve to be in hell, the system's horrible. Like, does she want to, like, you know, is Varian stuck in the maw? Like, could there be some dramatic reveal with these characters that Anduin respected that could make him, that she thinks could make him go to the Jailer?
In the case of Varian, people are wondering if he was disenchanted by Gul'dan, so therefore his soul was like obliterated by the Fel. But if that's not the case, because we also have the train station scene later in Legion where he tells him like what a king must do. The Machine of Death did not get broken at that point because it was the start of Legion. Ursak still made it in there. So Varian should have been sorted. I'm wondering, well, he has like the whole Logush Goldring connection. Could he be like this uber wolf in Ardenweald? And if Blizzard adds that, I would be so happy. Like a wolf that's Varian running around.
The uber
so
wolf.
nice.
The best dog. But yeah, I just wonder if those characters will make a reappearance, because even Sourfang, like, he would have definitely gone into the maw. And in Shadows Rising, Bwonsandi was presenting an illusion of Sourfang being happy to get Zappy Boy to work with him. So that's still unfinished business as well. So I wonder if they'll be used to further the story in a big way later on.
Did you find it, or do you find it weird that neither Varian or Sourfang has been seen by us so far?
Yeah, I do, because like there's so many references to other characters in all of the zones, and it's like, if we have Draka showing up, like why isn't, you know, Varian is like the warrior gladiator, like, why isn't he going to show up then?
Yep. What about you, Nobbel?
Might be things for later. I was just thinking it might be things for later that you want to deep dive. Like when we focus the story, right now it's all about introducing you to the zones of the Shadowlands, and here we are. At some point, that storyline is going to dive deeper into the Maw and the Tower of Torghast, and this is what's been happening to these souls. Sylvanas told Sourfang, like, maybe you'll be able to visit your son or something in that direction. So seeing Varrock together with Dranos, that could be rather interesting. And I'm imagining things for the future. But when it comes to cameos, Blizzard has said, like, pretty much anything you want, we could put in there. You want a Broxigar, you want a Mancrick's wife, which is actually in there. We can do that, so.
And I understand that, just having, like, a little cutesy reference to Sourfang wouldn't make sense. But I do think that them not being present at all hints that there's something more elaborate in store for them, because those are two characters that had cinematics like showing their death, and it was really sad, and it affected the course of an expansion. And then we had like a whole storyline where Anduin reacts dying, and Sourfang's got multiple burial scenes, and it just seemed that they make such a big deal out of their death that they're not just going to vanish. And they could even do something high-res with Sourfang, because we've got Thrall's story is continuing in Shadowlands, where he's trying to reunite with his family. And we've already got Sylvanas with the high-end...
Whoa. Thrall is trying to reunite with his family, what?
Oh, that was in one of the interviews from October. Oh? They were like... They're saying that it's going to explore that, and that will be a touching moment.
Oh, they're going to explore it. I was like, you mentioned he was trying to reconnect with his family like it was a quest or a mission. Like, where's mommy? Mommy!
No, there's no quest. He's just going to, like... It makes natural sense that if his mom is in the Shadowlands here, they're going to explore that, and it'll be a touching moment when that all comes together. So.
An interesting point for that one as well is when Sylvanas talks to Anduin, she's like, we can't even ... We've seen Draka, but we haven't seen Durotan at all. What if there's a storyline that they're going to present there? Like, you loved each other dearly in life. You died together on the battlefield. And then this Arbiter splits you apart. And that could be a whole motivation, a plot point towards the Shadowlands. Like, yeah, we should just rip the system down. This is not something that we are down with.
That's an interesting one, yeah.
Yeah, I think the interview briefly covered it. I'll try to find it, but it was like, Durotan has a different personality than Draka. Like, she's focused on saving the world. Durotan's probably, like, in the field, like, frolicking with, like, puppies and, like, frost wolves on the hunt. Maybe they'll be reunited in the future. Who knows? But, it's a good point. Like, when you think about the Shadowlands more and more, you're like, hey, the Kyrian with Uther was kind of shitty. Or, in the wrong hands, the Venthyr... go from purifying souls to torturing and exploiting them. Or, that is kind of crappy if you get, split from your loved one in the afterlife. Like, there are parts of the system that do make you go, when you think about it more.
There's another random Kyrian body that you can find where there's like a little note that mentions, my love, for some reason I remembered you, though you're not with me anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And at the end of the day, we're going to see, we've got these portals connected, which is just mind-blowing. We got portals connected between the Shadowlands and Azeroth. Canon portals in which random-ass people from Azeroth, they're going to go into the Shadowlands. They're going to be like, a fancy city. So what do I need to do in order to end up in Ardenweald? Oh, I need to be connected to nature. Okay, well, I'll make sure my garden is nice because I want to go there. Oh, I could be... a part of badass Metal Maldraxxus, I'll make sure to die on the battlefield. To know 100% how you die will end up in a certain way of the Shadowlands, or how you lived your life will be your afterlife. I cannot imagine the story going forward with the Shadowlands as it is right now to actually continue. I think that either the jailer or we are going to dismantle this system. I don't think that the whole Ouroboros is going to stay.
I also have to wonder, like, if you...
That's interesting.
If you're, like, dying now, like, is, like, Azeroth super peaceful because nobody wants to die? Like, if you die now, you're going to be sent to the Maw, so, stay alive.
People sitting inside, I don't want to die. I don't want to die.
Yeah.
Social distancing in game.
Yeah.
Oof.
Also, on the jailer talking about Anduin as the potential weapon, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you think this will mean, Nobbel?
Very hard to say. We got a whisper from Il'gynoth, and of course we can't take those whispers at face value guaranteed, but at the same time the Void Siege like 1,000 truths, which says the Boy King will serve at the Master's table. 3 lies he will offer you. Those lies could be from the Master, aka the Jailer, or they could be from Anduin himself. We're gonna find out. I believe Otmod's journal mentioned that the first lie was already told, which might be connected to how Sylvanas was gathered to the Jailer side, but that is very much speculation. Then Shadow's Rising book has Anduin at some point looking at Syrah Moonwarden, the dark warden that they've captured, and they're like, "Where's Sylvanas?" And she's like, "I'll never tell." And Anduin has been under a lot of pressure. He's like, "I've been dealing with this war chief of the Horde. I've been dealing with the Legion. My daddy got disenchanted. I've been doing this and this and this." And for a split second, he loses control, and there's like dark powers that come out of it. And that was purposely put into the book. And then Syrah is like, "Oh yeah, how does it feel to lose, little lion? You're gonna serve us well." It's like, oh, so it's repeated again. So there is something in there. And when it comes to the Jailer, his interest is piqued by Anduin when he uses the light. So there is the potential that he's looking at like the cosmic base foundation forces, like arcane and the light, like we talked about earlier. Or maybe it's more like his conviction, like, oh, he was able to call upon the light even in the Maw. What is this madness? But that whole, again, there is still so much left for mysteries. All I'm saying is, like, Anduin is going to spend the most time with the Jailer in the Maw. It's going to be interesting to find out.
I think it's interesting because the Jailer was clearly after Arthas as well, making sure Frostmourne got to him, and Blizzard has been playing up the Arthas and Anduin parallels in recent expansions. Like, we've had the Lordaeron cinematic where it was like very similar to the Warcraft 3 cinematic, opening like the doors, like shot for shot similarities. Anduin and his horse, Arthas, has one. Both like.
You just reminded me of the Ardenweald play, and I just had a little giggle.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Theater.
Very like that play is amazing.
It is.
And it's like, like they're both in their convictions, but as we've seen in Shadows Rising, Anduin is willing to cross some lines or go ahead with questionable methods to do what is right. Both very into the light, young rulers, lots of pressure, sort of a nemesis that they keep following, and then they lose track of the actual, doing what's right just to get revenge on their nemesis. You have to wonder, like, what is the Jailer drawn to these kind of like paladin, like, overzealous types that have mastery of the light and thinks that they can be made into vessels because if they believe in something, they like go in 200%.
I like the Arthas parallels. I hadn't thought about those before. Also the ones in War Crimes where there was like this dialogue between Garrosh and Anduin where the question was asked, like, "I'm not an Arthas." And he's like, "No, you're not, but what if I am?" And then the road that Anduin's been on, because he's always been this character that can do no wrong, always voice of reason when it comes to Varian, teaching Varian how to be a ruler at the age of 15.
Goes heard when does the wrong thing. Yeah.
Right? And at some point they even added the part where he now can feel in his bones if something is right or wrong. And I'm like, I don't know. But now he's cracking. Now he's actually going to the dark side. So people are wondering, like, is this Arthas 2.0? I personally hope not. I do hope that he goes dark for a little bit. Like, it's always a good thing to see a bit of a darker side, but not forever. I don't think that is the idea behind it.
Yeah, I think also, I think that there's a missed opportunity with 8.3 to make Anduin multi-dimensional, because it's really cool when he saw Stormwind being corrupt, and he could have his like moment to shine because Sylvanas wasn't around, and we still, we got that glorious like punch Tarathian.
Yeah, that was a good one.
But 8.3 ended the expansion. Those are moving on to Shadowlands. I feel like they missed out on a lot where it's just like, Anduin is dealing with a lot of stuff. His father's dead. He's got grief. He's got like very real struggles. He could be pretty relatable, and they had to sort of, rush past all that. So I'm hoping he can just be like an interesting character between the light and the void, and not be like, oh well, now he went from being a perfect light child to like evil, Arthas 2.0. Like, I think nuance is good.
I was hoping that he'd have a period of being corrupted there after seeing that punch on Rathian, but that didn't exactly happen. So it's going to be interesting to see now if he will indeed go into some kind of dark path, maybe temporarily or for a longer time. I think having like 2.0s is always a bit like, not so fun. Like we already have Savannah's, potentially being a 2.0 garish. Yeah,
like, hey,
yeah,
like the
that's
original,
true too. Yeah.
Get off my character.
Yeah, I mean, maybe because this happened in the past, there will be a way to stop it from going all the way to 2.0 as well.
Varian, the soul of Varian could show up and be like, no, Andrew.
Yeah.
Remember who you are, Simba.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they put it all together.
Yeah. So I know it's getting late for you guys in EU.
Indeed.
So I think we want to wrap things up pretty quickly because it's 3 p.m. here and it's like midnight for you guys.
Yeah, let me remove the spoiler tag and start wrapping things up. Hopefully that was some interesting lore for you guys in the chat who are watching. It's always nice to talk lore with NOBBEL. We tend to forget about the time when that happens. But yeah, it's really nice to hear the insight. Perk and I was talking about some of these things last week, so it's always nice to hear your takes on it too.
And I love having chat with Perk about it as well. Like Perk goes, oh, when something cool happened, I get like a DM and it's like, did you see this? I'm like, no, not yet. Let me check on Wowhead. It's like, oh my god, and then we just lose ourselves for an hour.
Yeah. It's really nice for me as well to sit here and listen to you both, like going back and forth a bit on things, like because you say your opinion on one of the things because of this, and Perk either the same opinion or a different opinion, and for her own reasons of it, and it's like really nice to listen and put all the threads together that way. So it's awesome now, and I bet a lot of people who are watching feel the same way. NOBBEL, before we head off, is there anything as a last thing that you want to mention or talk about? Anything about the expansion, your experience, or anything? Shout out to your guild again.
Right. No, I'm really looking forward to the moment where I can actually play the game. Like so far for me from launch has just been busy trying to cover every bit of the story.
Mm-hmm.
With like double uploads and whatnot. I think I'm gonna have to now pick and choose the little juicy parts out of it that I really want to talk about. But no, one of the things that really makes me happy about the Shadowlands is every time they explain something, we get like 10 new questions. Like, where's it gonna go? What's happening here? And that's really cool to see what they announced at BlizzCon, that the cosmic forces are going to play a part in the storyline. New building blocks for things are happening. I'm really excited about the storyline. I'm really hoping it's going to deliver. Just, not an ending like Battle for Azeroth, but that it's just going to deliver and that's going to be fun. I'm really happy with how many people are now enjoying Shadowlands. And I hope that despite the craziness of the world, that the patches are going to keep rolling out, the content's going to keep rolling out, and everybody's going to have a great time.
I will link you an interview from October NOBBEL that I think is related to the story, because Blizzard was in this interview, they're like, yeah, we're going to shift how we tell stories in Shadowlands and be like more epic and play to our MMO strengths versus like little political threads that like make everyone angry all the time. But I'll link you that interview. I feel like it was lost in like the big barrage of Ian interviews with the pre-patch, but it's a definite choice that they want to go back to telling like these big fantasy stories and play to their strengths, which I think has been working out better.
Cool. And speaking of interviews, we also have that for those of you who are not going to bed, like maybe some of us EU people. There is an interview in about 2.5 hours, I believe, or 2 hours maybe, with Ian and Sloot. So feel free to check that out as well if you guys like to keep up with things. And if you don't worry, we will cover it next week on Wowhead Weekly. And before anyone heads off, I want to shout out NOBBEL properly. NOBBEL can be found on Twitter on YouTube. YouTube is all the meaty storytelling things where you can deep dive into any topic to learn more about it. There's even like you can have a video from like 5 years ago, and then there's like an updated version now, you know, to take care of all the lore like that. So it's perfect for those of us who either haven't had the time or haven't had the possibility maybe to read everything, because not everything is in the game itself. Some things are in books and whatnot. Yeah, nice. Thank you for linking those things for Nobbel. Perfect. He can also be found on Twitch, as he sometimes decides to stream as well. So, yeah, follow him on all the
recently
socials.
Not so much. I've just been editing and making videos.
Yeah.
Like, normally I stream once a week, but it's kind of been slipping in there, so I need to get back into it.
Understandable.
Yeah. And we've been highlighting some of the lore videos on Wowhead. We swapped to doing the raid this weekend, but over the holidays, when there's like less Blizzard news, we'll be highlighting the Ardenweald and Revendreth stories. So if you miss something, or if you're like, hey, Spires of Ascension, why are these angels upset now? Now the sense.
Yep, indeed. All right, well, in that case, let us thank Nobbel for coming here as a special warm guest of the show. Thank you very much, Nobbel. We always enjoy having you here, hearing your inputs and everything. I hope you had a good time too. I know the chat always enjoys you being here too. Awesome.
Always have a good time. Everybody in the chat as well, commenting along as we're doing things. Sorry that we didn't get immediate reaction, but thank you for catching the Voltio mistake. That would have been awful. But thank you very much, everybody.
Novel exposed reaction.
I'm glad chat is focusing on that as well, to be aware of all the little details, as they are pretty important. Do we have time for a high five?
I think so.
All right.
Yeah.
My high five is here. Other side for Perk.
Hello.
And Nobbel, you're gonna have 2 hands on the same side.
Oh, right, hang on. Just
Other
watching
side.
the stream with updates. Other side, of course it is.
Okay.
Trailer. Yeah.
I'll do a countdown.
Ready?
Yeah, I'll do a countdown and then
Okay.
you guys go. Okay. In 3, 2, 1.
Ta-da!
Perfect.
Yay, we did it.
Success. Games you can play
right
even
now.
with social
Is there
distancing at home.
Here's your
Thank you
show.
very much to everyone for watching. Don't forget to follow Nobbel on his socials, and we'll be back next week covering everything between now and then. It'll be interesting to see how the World First Race is also
will it be
unveiling
over?
there. Yeah, is it going to be over? Is it going to be barely started? We'll see.
Yeah.
Yep.
For Raider's sake, I hope it's over.
Yeah. Oh, raiding over Christmas won't be nice. But yeah, thank you everyone for supporting as well. I saw that there was a bunch of you guys who were subscribing to the channel as well. I was not able to note down the names, but thank you. I also noticed Master Sora gifting some subs as well. Thank you very much for supporting Wowhead. Also shout out to the Wowhead premium users on the website as well. And yeah, see you next week. Bye-bye everyone.
Bye.
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 I stopped waving. We're still going. All right, hang on.